in the beginning.
Yeah, maybe it was 4 months. It seemed like a long time.
Ted, we actually tested negative. We just got out of there too. We tested negative 10 days to the day, and we were fine.
Well, they've told me not to test every day because they know better now. What can I tell you?
No, you don't test every day, but I felt normally.
I think the rabbi is ready.
If they're telling you not to, don't stick anything up your nose. That used to be solid advice.
Mhm.
The problem is this is so new. They really, you don't have 20 years of experience with it.
No,
Right.
people have been sticking stuff up their nose for a lot longer than that.
Well, I'm not trying to join your conversation, Rabbi.
All right, well, let's jump in and get started with Yedid Nefesh, page 14 in Siddur Sim Shalom, page 10 in Siddur Lev Shalem. Yedid Nefesh av harachaman meshoch avdach el retzonach yarutz avdach kemo ayal yishtachaveh el mul hadarach yerav lo yedidutach Mino fetzu v'chol ta'am hadur na'eh ziv ha'olam nafshi cholat ahavatach ana el na'refana la beharot la na'am zivach Az titchazek v'titrapei v'haita lach shivchat olam v'tikyemu rachamecha v'chusna al beino havach Ki ze kama nichsaf lirot betiferet uzach ana eli machmad libi chushana ve'al titalam yigalena ufros chaviv alai Etzukat shelamach Ta'ir eretz mikvodach Nagila v'nismecha bach Maherahu kiva moed V'choneni ki me'olam Yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai. Yada die 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 die. Lechu neranena ladonai nari aletzor yishenu nekadma fanav betoda bizmirot nari alo nekadma fanav betoda bizmirot nari alo Kiel gadol Adonai Umelech gadol al kol Elohim asher biyado mecherei aret v'toafot tarim lo asher biyado mechere aretz v'to'afot harim lo. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song. Arba'im shana kut bedor va'omar am toy levavhem vehem lo yadu derachai asher nishbati v'api im yavoun el menuchati. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru Miyom Liyom Yeshu Ahato, Sapru Vagoyim Kevodo, Bechol Ha'amim Nifleotav, Ki Gadol Adonai, hulal me'od, norahu, al kol Elohim, yai, ki kol Elohei ha'amim elilim, va'adonai shamayim asa, hod v'hadar lefanav, Oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho, havul Adonai mishbechot amim, havul Adonai kavod va'oz, havul Adonai kevod shemo, se'u mincha, uvo lechatzrotav, yai, ishtachavul Adonai behadrat kodesh, Chilu mipanav kol haaretz, imru vagoyim Adonai malach, afti kon tevel baal timot, yadin amim b'meisharim, yismechu hashamayim betagel haaretz, yiram hayam umelo ya'alo sadai, V'chol asher bo yai az yeraninu kol atzeyar lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, lishpot tevel betzedek ve'amim be'emunato, yai Yai die 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 die. Yai die die die. Yai die 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 die. Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine, righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about. Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the master of all the earth. The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory. You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine. Light is sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce the divine holy name. Or zaru Allah tzadik ulishrei simcha. Or zaru Allah tzadik ulishrei simcha. Simchu tzadikim bahadonai behodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim bahadonai behodu lezecher kodsho. Moshe Nashe Karaskini Flotasa, Hoshi Elohim in Ozro Kotsho. Zachar Kaso. Zamru Adonai Bechinor, Bechinor v'kol Zimra, B'chatzotzrot v'kol Shofar, Hariu lifnei HaMelech Adonai, Yiram Hayam Umlo'o, Tevel v'yoshveva, Neharot Yimcha Uchaf Yachad, Harim Yeranenu, Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel betzedek, v'yamim b'mei Yiram hayam umlo'o, tevel v'yoshveva, neharot yimcha uchaf yachad, harim yeranenu. Adonai reigns, nations tremble. The one enthroned amidst the Kruvim makes the world quake. Adonai is great in Zion above all nations. They shall acknowledge your name, saying, Great, awe-inspiring Holy One. A sovereign strength lies in the love of justice, and you forge the paths of truth, judging Jacob righteously and justly. Exalt Adonai our God, bow down before God, the Holy One. Moses and Aaron among God's priests, and Samuel among those who called upon the divine name. They called to you and you answered them. You spoke to them from amidst the cloud. They kept your covenant and the law you gave them. Exalt Adonai our God and bow down at God's holy mountain, for Adonai our God is holy. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. We rise as able and continue page 20 in Sidur Sim Shalom, page 21 in Sidur Leiv Shalem. Mizmor LeDavid, Havu Adonai B'nei Elim, Havu Adonai Kavod Va'oz, Havu Adonai Kavod Shemo, Tishtachavu Adonai Behadrat Kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod, hirim Adonai almayim 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 rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, vayishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon. Vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon v'Siryon kemo ven re'emim. Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh. Kol Adonai yechol el ayalot, vayechesov ye'arot, uvehechalo kulo omer kavod, kulo omer kavod. Adonai lama bo yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Chaverim, you may be seated as we continue with Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala, Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Hishmianu el hamiyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad. L'shemo tiferet v'liti la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki hi makor habaracha merosh mikedem nisucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Migdash melech ir melucha kumitzei mitocha hafecha rav lach shevet be'emek habacha vehu yachmol Allah yichem la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Kitna ari me'afar kumi livshi bigdei tifar tehech ami ayad ben yishai beit alachmi korva ehel nafshi ge ala la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Hit oreri kiva orech kumi ori shir daberi kvod Adonai alayich nigla la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lo tevoshi ve'lo tikami matishtochachi umatehemi bach yechesu aniyei ami v'nivneta ir alti la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Ve'hayulim shisa shosayich V'rachaku kol nevalayich yasis alayich Elohayich kim sos chatan al kala la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Yaminu small tifrotzi Bet Adonai ta'aritzi al yad ish ben pahartzi v'nismecha v'nagila la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Bo'и v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'v'tzohola toch emunei am segula boi chala la 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 lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Chavirim, you may be seated. Mizmor shir leyom HaShabbat, tov leodot la'Adonai, tov ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, le'hagid baboker chazdecha, ve'emunatcha ba'leilot, alei asor v'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat, tov leodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. Tzaddik katamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yiskeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrihu od yenuvun beseva Deshenim verananim yeyu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri velo avlatabo Adonai malach geut lavesh. Mikolot mayim, mayim rabim adirim, adirim mishbreyam, adir bamarom Adonai, edotecha nemnu meod, levecha nava kodesh, Adonai lorech yamim. On page 24 in Sidur Sim Shalom, page 30 in Sidur Lev Shalem, we continue with Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal, Vit Gadash, Shmei Rabbah,
Amen.
Yalma Divra Kirutei, V'Amlich Malchutei, B'chai Echon, V'Yom Echon, V'chai Echol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kari V'Imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach La'olam Lo Me'almaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shmei Kudsha Bricha La'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Da'amiran V'Alma V'Imramein.
Amen.
Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Imamav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru. Amen.
Amen.
Chaverim, you may be seated. So, some of you may have heard this or seen this in one of the various or many mail feeds that we are all inundated by, but this Shabbat is and has been for the last number of years been designated as reproductive rights Shabbat, and there's a Shabbos for everything. This one we owe to, in part, to the National Council of Jewish Women, who have taken this up as a significant issue. And it is a significant issue, but as most significant issues often tend to be, it is very complex. And the problem with complex issues is we live increasingly in a society where nuance is not appreciated and polarization seems to be the norm. And part of the reason why this particular Shabbat of Parshat Mishpatim has been chosen is that the parasha, in amongst the myriad of laws that it deals with a case of two men who are having fisticuffs, and in the process of their fight, they injure a pregnant woman who, as a result of being struck, loses the fetus she is carrying. And the text penalizes them with a monetary fine, and the suggestion that the fetus is not considered a viable human life, and therefore there's no penalty for having brought that life to an end. Merely a financial loss that the father of the child might have incurred because the child would have been, quote, part of his chattel. The problem with using that particular example is that may have been part of the biblical perception of child viability, but it really doesn't reflect the entire gamut of discussion within our tradition. And there are voices within the pro-choice movement, especially within the Jewish community, who seize on this passage and would like to suggest, therefore, that a pro-choice agenda of abortion on demand is in fact biblically sanctioned and permitted. I find that that might be an extreme reading, and it certainly doesn't reflect rabbinic thought on the question. The problem that we have is the way the argument is currently construed is, what is the choice that we have if we are not going to be pro-choice? We end up having to be in the pro-life camp. The problem with being in the pro-life camp, especially as it is currently manifesting itself with an increasingly narrow view on the subject, is it is essentially trying to erase abortion as a possibility at any point in the process of pregnancy, with a disregard for, I'll say, our faith tradition, which, as often happens, is a little more complex. Because if this particular verse suggests that the child is of nothingness, it's that it's null and void, there is therefore a strand of Jewish law which suggests that, in point of fact, because it is nothing more than water, nothing more than an amalgam of cells, therefore abortion is easily and always permissible. But it ignores an entire strand of our tradition, which suggests that if the child is not a bar kayama, an independent, extant life, it is at least a potential life. And as a potential life, has to be given measures of protection. And so you have poll number one, which suggests that abortion is of no great, quote, consequence, and therefore should be permissible all the time. And then you have the other polarity, which starts from the position of it is a potential life and therefore should be protected, just as all life is protected, and therefore you shouldn't do it. And what you discover is that as the rabbis discuss, debate, argue about this polarity, the two sides essentially increasingly move closer to each other. And the debate becomes rooted in questions such as, where is the life of the mother threatened by the pregnancy? Is the health of the mother? Is the mental health of the mother, right? That's a much narrower set of parameters than no, never, and yes, always. There are circumstances in which this is a legitimate choice because of the conflict between the extant life of the mother versus the potential life of the child. Recognizing that outside the womb, especially early in pregnancy, the viability of the child is extremely limited at best. And so that leaves us as a Jewish community sort of stuck between both polarities. I know that I can't put myself in the pro-life camp because I know that our tradition allows for this wrenching choice to be made, but allows it in order to provide protection to the mom. And if I could just allow a personal note, an aside, the hospital that Jody and I chose was chosen not because of its geographic proximity, because that would have put us into a Catholic hospital, where chas v'chalila, if there was a problem, their decision-making would have overridden ours. And so I can't be part of that no-never group. But I find it very uncomfortable to be part of a yes, always, even though I might do it as a way of affirming the right of each woman to make a choice based on her faith tradition and her understanding of the issue. The problem is the way it is presented as a no problem. In fact, I didn't notice it at the time that I watched, but a colleague of mine called it to my attention that there were, in fact, some members of Congress who were wearing little pro-abortion buttons. And the O in the word was shaped like a little heart. It is jarring to think that you can put it, and the heart is supposed to, I guess, represent I love abortion. I mean, it just saying it out loud tells you how ludicrous the statement is, or is it, however else we approach it, we have to approach it with a measure of seriousness that says this is a hard thing in the life of a person, and it should not be an easy one. And for as much as I may want to embrace the idea of choice and giving it to the person so that they can make it in their own good conscience and with the best medical advice, the best support, the best religious guidance that their faith tradition has to offer, I don't know anyone who approaches it with oh, I love this choice that I'm making in this moment. And so if we have something to add to this discussion that is truly reflective of our tradition, as we are being asked to weigh in on the subject of reproductive rights and freedoms, it is perhaps our greatest contribution if we can make a contribution towards a nuanced, deeper understanding, one which allows our faith tradition to have a voice for our community, and not be governed by those who would negate the beliefs of our faith and create impossible standards and barriers that are imposed by a minority on the rest. And at the same time, ours also has to be a voice that says we may have no choice but to afford and affirm the right to something, but we have to educate and appreciate that it is not this wanton, laissez-faire attitude towards even a potential life and the sanctity that it represents. So, with that, let me invite everyone to turn to either page 27 in Sidur Sim Shalom, page 38 in Sidur Leiv Shalem, and we rise as able and join together in Kaddish to Rabbanah. Yit Gadal v'yit Garash Shmei Rabbah, V'alma Divra Kirutei V'amlich Malchutei, B'chai echon v'yom echon v'chai lechol Beit Israel ba'agala uvi b'charim ru amen.
Amen.
Hey Shmei Rabba Barak Shabbat Vitar Vitornam Vinaseh Vitadar Vitalal Shmei Vitor La'ela V'Kol Birchata V'Shirota Tush B'Chata V'Nechamata Da'amiran V'Alma V'Imramein Al Yisrael V'Al Rabbanat V'Al Talmidehon V'Al Kol V'Al Kol Man V'Asim V'Oraita Diva Adra Hadei V'Diva Kol Atar V'Atar Yehei Amarabba Savarachmi V'Chayin Arishin V'Navra Uforkana V'Karam Avahon V'Shmaya V'Amen Yehei Amarabba Mishmaya V'Chayin Tovim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Amen Oseh Shalom Yirolav U'Barachamav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Chaverim, you may be seated. We'll conclude with Shalom Aleichem, page 13 in Sidur Sim Shalom, page 73 in Leiv Shalem. Hold on. Accessing the right file. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Barchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom V'Orach. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat
Shabbos,
shalom,
everyone.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shalom. Good to see you all.
Shabbos.
Bet you